everybody, Sherry Wind here, just checking with you as we begin week 7. I want to first just briefly review week 6. I want to briefly introduce you to week 7 content, and then discuss an upcoming writing assignment, which I'm sure you've seen coming up in the modules as well as on the course schedule, which is the Child Observation Project, which is up here on your screen. So let me just do some of the preliminary discussion, and then we'll get to this project thereafter. So I want to just acknowledge all of you for a very spirited discussion regarding the Heinz dilemma, as that looks at moral development, which starts to take place during those early childhood, middle childhood years. And many of you had some really good objections to that you see moral development happening differently. But according to Kohlberg, we go through stages where how we develop morals, of course, is affected by us, our nature, by certainly our parents and the environment in which we grew up in. But it really just wants to point out the evolution we go through that morals and values are really based on initially avoiding punishment. As children, we don't want to get into trouble, so we follow rules, do what's right to avoid punishment and consequences. As we mature, we tend to understand the bigger picture of why it's important to follow rules, for example. And we might do that more for ourselves when we're in more of this egocentric, more about us. And then as we age, and I'm sure many of you as young adults, older adults, some of you with children of your own, sort of follow rules because it's better for all of us. It helps society work just more smoothly. So I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of points from that. As far as next week goes, we're getting into adolescence. And for many of you, that's not that far in the rearview mirror. For those of you that are in your early 20s or even late 20s, adolescence is probably something you have some strong memories of. And again, we'll look at the biological changes, which of course in adolescence is huge, right? We'll talk about the cognitive changes of how we change our mindset, the way we think is differently. And one of the things we do in adolescence is become very egocentric. Egocentrism is the topic of your reflection essay this week. We're going to really understand why when we're in adolescence and teen years, it's all about us, that we think we know what's right, that everyone else is judged through our eyes. And our discussion this week will be looking at identity crisis, which I'm sure many of you, again, probably remember clearly, and you're going to be asked to share sort of your memory of your identity crisis. And some of us still experience identity crisis. It's not just during adolescence that we sometimes have issues in terms of answering the question, who am I? Again, in the spirit of always application, making things relevant, applying everything to your own lives. Lastly, I do want to talk about our Child Observation Project, which is a paper that's coming up. It's a 75-point paper that's coming up, and that is due on July 13th. So let me just open up the assignment sheet here, and we can briefly take a look at that. Everything, of course, is already on D2L. So again, Naturalistic Observation Project is worth 75 points. The point being a naturalistic observation project is that you really would prefer is that the child or children that you end up observing don't know you're doing that. And of course, this all has to be done in a very appropriate way. So objective is, through naturalistic observation, you'll learn about the biological, cognitive, and psychosocial aspects of human behavior. You're going to observe 1 or 2 children in a natural setting for about 30 minutes. The age of the children should be under 14 because that's about the age that we're just finishing up and going into slightly. It can include sitting on a bench at a park, sitting at a mall, waiting in a doctor's office, skate park. It could also be children of your own or relatives. You can ask your aunt or uncle or a sister or brother if you can just observe their kids playing in their backyard or playing at a park. Again, be thoughtful about who you observe and make sure that it is appropriate. You'll then write a 3-page paper that describes their behavior using, again, those 3 lenses, the bio, the psycho, and the cognitive models. Here's some of the things you possibly can choose to observe. How did the child resolve conflict? What method did the child use to attract adult attention? Did they go over to an adult needing help of some kind? That might look at attachment styles somewhat. What rules do young children play by? How are they enforced? Did you notice any bullying going on? How do the social interactions of popular children differ maybe from some unpopular ones? Do males and females interact differently? You're going to write up your findings and of your observations. Paper, of course, needs to follow APA and should include a title page. So lastly, here's your rubric. So here's how the points will break down. So please include your notes from your observation, summary of what you noticed, and then get more specific. What biological things did you notice? Cognitive and psychosocial factors. And include a couple of examples. Examples make things richer, right? It shows evidence. I noticed that the child went back to its mom a few times. That could mean that the child might have more of an insecure attachment style, or maybe a secure one based, again, on other information you might have observed. Conclusions of your observation, obviously, again, APA style, and that it's a 3-page paper for a total of 75 points. Have some fun with this. Again, in the spirit, again, of always applying, making the information we do relevant. Now you're taking all this information that you have thus far learned from the earlier stages of development and applying it to some children that you're going to observe. Again, let me know if any of you have any questions. And I'm always here available by email. I could always set up a one-on-one Zoom. I'm always, of course, willing to read drafts of papers or anything that you might want to just run by me. Nice talking with you all. See you guys soon.